you free and brave?
Uh-huh.
And I'm free and brave.
Sure.
Papa, is everybody in Pearl Street free and brave?
Well, little one, we are now. But it wasn't always this way.
How's that, Papa?
Come over to the window. I want to show you something. You see that house over there?
You mean the Bartnick birdhouse?
Yes, that's the one. I remember when they moved into this neighborhood, full of dreams and fresh ideas. They bought that place back in October of 2006. It was an old HUD house, and it didn't look like much. But the Bartnicks dreamed and sketched and got their ideas on paper. Their plans were approved in March of the next year, and their contractors started tearing out the old and putting in the new.
It's a pretty big house for just 2 people.
Sure, but in the old walls they could see the home they would own, one they could throw open to others who needed a place to stay and a family to come home to at the end of every day. They figured, just because they don't have kids of their own doesn't mean they shouldn't have a family, right? Problem is, the renovations did not go as smoothly as they hoped. In May, an 8-hour rainstorm hit Englewood while the Bartnicks' roof was off their house, and some unreliable contractors did not complete their work as promised. It was hard work for the abandoned homeowners to finish the house, but some qualified contractor friends of theirs swooped in before the first snows settled on the city and saved the day. By January 3rd, 2008, the city building inspectors and the county assessor gave the house a final inspection, and even the bank's appraiser gave the house a thumbs up. So the Bartnicks had inspectors, assessors, and appraisers all giving their final approval. But the city refused to sign off on the building permit. The city used the excuse of a correction notice, referring to minor corrections that don't require a licensed contractor to complete. Something much darker was going on.
Why?
We must go back 6 months to October 2007. The Bartnick birds invited a young South Korean student to stay with them. He was struggling to adapt to life in a college residence, and the Bartnick home was a positive alternative. But a snow cloud of discrimination drifted over Pearl Street and dumped itself on some of the neighbors' houses. Some said, "Don't you know a South Korean shot up Virginia Tech? Get rid of this one." Others, by the way they interrogated or just stared at him, made him feel very unwelcome. Later, when a young red robin moved into the Bartnicks' house, the blue bird neighbors and police finches posted official-looking warnings which became so frightening the robin flew away forever. The bird brains continued to live in their house despite some foul-beaked slander and cold shoulders from the city, so some of the neighbors went to see birds they knew in the city council and management structures. They intended to get their way by using laws for parking or by making fences to prevent the Bartnicks from taking out their trash. They even tried to remove the Bartnicks' telephone pole access. Some city management birds agreed to help these neighbors. First, they revoked the Bartnicks' existing building permission and made them buy another permit. They refused to help when the Bartnick birds complained that their contractors were not finishing the plumbing and heating work. The city said the contractors were off the hook. Third, the Bartnicks called for final inspections on January the 3rd, 2008. Inspectors Petty and Daly were impressed, but they said, "We were told that you have to pull brand new permits before we can sign off." The city demanded compliance with the official government definition of a household. The Bartnicks did everything they were told to do, and they relied on existing laws. Still, the city refused to give the Bartnicks the final sign-off. They also refused to explain why, and refused to hear an appeal by the Bartnicks. Ultimately, the attempt to use codes and bylaws to remove the Bartnicks did not succeed, so the city took them to court, alleging that they contravened the definition of a household. This was completely untrue. The Bartnicks pointed out that theirs was a boarding house under the small group homes category. The judge looked at the existing definitions and zoning provisions and dismissed the case. The Bartnick birds were completely within the law to exist as a boarding house. So the Bartnicks celebrated at the local bird walk, and they gave their extra room to another student.
So it was all over.
Ah, the Bartnicks thought so. But now a cloud of ego moved over Pearl Street. Because the judge had ruled against them, the complainants felt embarrassed. But they were not about to give up.
Did every bird in Pearl Street feel like this?
Not at all. Minutes of council meetings show that many birds stood up to support the Bartnicks.
So what happened next?
A cloud of control blew in. To regain control of the situation, the city decided to modify the law defining boarding houses. But only some of their proposed modifications were published in the Englewood Herald. To buy time for the redrafting of laws, the city declared the Bartnicks' private residence a public emergency. However, according to the city charter, the birdhouse did not qualify as such. They spent the summer redrafting their laws to make the Bartnicks' use of their home illegal. The new law makes any boarding house illegal in a residential area. But in September, the city got in a hurry and failed to run the last modifications through the Commission for Planning and Zoning before they voted on it. This was against the Charter's outlined procedure in Article 58. Once the redrafting was done, a debate started over grandfathering.
Who were the grandchildren?
No, here grandfathering means that those already living under existing laws can continue to do so without restrictions or having to register. But the council established 7 onerous new conditions that only apply to the Bartnick household. This was approved at a council meeting, but those who opposed the Bartnicks and wanted them declared outright illegal insisted on including a rule that says grandfathering only applies to birds with a homeowner's final inspection. The city said that the Bartnick house never had one of these and demanded that they prove to the city manager that they did. So all of a sudden, the Bartnicks became sitting ducks.
So the Bartnicks won the right to keep running their home the way they always had. But the city said only if they had a final permit, which they, the city, had withheld.
You're sharp. This is exactly the catch-22 in which the Bartnicks found themselves.
What a mess! How was it sorted out?
The Bartnicks found their very existence outlawed on the block. They had invested all their money to build a dream home and set up contracts with the bank and with others to live there. Now the city wanted to make them break these contracts and force out the birds of colour themselves.
Uh-oh, that's not good. So what happened next?
The whole affair ended up in a jury trial last year, in August 2009. The Bartnicks case relied on equal access laws to all housing zones and other Englewood group home definitions. After the new boarding house code was enacted, they were no longer described by the new definition. As to new permits and licenses. And finally, in a crime, there must be a victim, and there must be harm done. In the Bartnicks case, there was no harm, and there were no victims. Therefore, there was no crime. The jury considered all the applicable laws, including those that the city had rewritten. As a result, in all material respects, the Bartnick birds were found innocent and were allowed to continue their existence without restrictions. But that wasn't the end of it. Everybody knew that despite the trial outcome, clouds still hung heavy over Pearl Street. Fortunately, everybody also recognized the need to be mature and build relationships rather than destroy their neighborhood. After all, there were plenty of city and state laws to give the neighbors redress if anything bad ever did happen. The Bartnicks' ruffled feathers got smoothed over, and we all tried hard to be more welcoming to the Bartnick study birds and to grant their bird brains some privacy. It took courage to work things out, but we did it. And today I can honestly say that we're all proud to be free and brave. In fact, this weekend we're going to split the worm at the bottom of that empty tequila bottle with the Bartnicks.
Well, I'm so glad, because some of the guys staying there have invited me to go shoot some hoops with them.